The restaurant host looks the elderly man up and down with disgust. "I'm sorry, but we don't serve your kind here. This is a family establishment." 64-year-old Sergeant Major Joseph Washington adjusts his clean but worn jacket as the young hostess points toward the exit, her voice loud enough for other diners to hear her rejection of what she assumes is a homeless vagrant. What she doesn't see is Colonel Patricia Martinez at a nearby table, rising from her chair with fire in her eyes as she recognizes the Medal of Honor recipient she met during a ceremony at the Pentagon. What happens when this colonel intervenes? Will restore your faith in military loyalty and show you that true leaders never abandon their troops. If stories of standing up for what's right move you, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments about a time you witnessed someone defend the defenseless. This moment of justice will leave you breathless. Joseph had been walking downtown for hours trying to find somewhere to eat his birthday dinner alone. At 64, he had no family left and few friends, most of his military brothers having passed away or moved to distant cities. His monthly disability check stretched thin, but today marked his birthday and the anniversary of the day that changed his life forever in the jungles of Vietnam. The Golden Fork restaurant looked welcoming from the outside, with warm lighting and families enjoying meals together through the large windows. Joseph had saved money for 2 weeks to afford a decent dinner somewhere nice, wanting to mark his birthday with dignity rather than eating alone in his small apartment again. The hostess, a young woman named Ashley who appeared to be in her early 20s, looked up from her reservation book as Joseph approached the host station. Her pleasant smile disappeared immediately when she took in his appearance. Worn but clean clothing, weathered face, and the careful posture of someone who had learned to expect rejection from civilian establishments. Ashley's expression shifted to one of obvious disgust and discomfort as she looked Joseph up and down like he was something unpleasant that had wandered in from the street. She made no attempt to hide her assessment or speak quietly about whatever concerns she might have about his presence in their upscale establishment. Other diners began to notice the interaction at the host station, some turning in their chairs to observe what appeared to be a confrontation between the young hostess and an elderly man who clearly didn't meet their standards for appropriate clientele. Several customers exchanged knowing looks and whispered comments about the declining neighborhood. Ashley announces loudly that the restaurant is fully booked for the evening and cannot accommodate walk-in customers, despite the fact that Joseph can see several empty tables throughout the dining room. Her voice carries across the restaurant, ensuring that everyone present understands that this particular customer is being turned away. Joseph politely explains that he called earlier and was told no reservations were necessary for parties of one, and that he has money to pay for his meal. He shows Ashley the cash in his wallet, hoping to demonstrate that he's a legitimate customer rather than someone seeking handouts or causing trouble. Ashley's voice grows louder and more hostile as she tells Joseph that their establishment caters to a certain type of clientele and maintains standards that he clearly doesn't meet. She suggests that he would be more comfortable at one of the fast food restaurants down the street that don't have dress codes or quality expectations. A well-dressed couple at a nearby table nods approvingly at Ashley's handling of the situation, the woman commenting to her husband that it's good to see businesses maintaining standards and protecting their regular customers from uncomfortable encounters with undesirable elements from the street. Joseph tries to explain that his clothes are clean and he's simply an older gentleman wanting to enjoy a birthday dinner, but Ashley interrupts him with increasing aggression. She tells him that she doesn't believe his story, and that his presence is making other customers uncomfortable and disrupting their dining experience. The restaurant manager, a middle-aged man named Derek, emerges from the kitchen to see what's causing the disturbance at the host station. Instead of diffusing the situation, Derek supports Ashley's assessment and tells Joseph that private businesses have the right to refuse service to anyone they choose for any reason. Derek explains loudly that The Golden Fork has a reputation to maintain and cannot allow people who don't fit their image to drive away paying customers, who expect a certain level of atmosphere and clientele. He points toward the door and tells Joseph to leave immediately before they call security to have him removed from the premises. Several diners have stopped eating to watch the confrontation, some pulling out phones to record what they apparently find entertaining rather than disturbing. A family with teenage children uses the situation as a teaching moment about what happens to people who don't work hard or make good choices in life. Joseph's shoulders sag as he realizes that no amount of explanation will change their minds about serving him. He turns toward the exit, his birthday hopes crushed by the cruel rejection and public humiliation. His hand instinctively moves to touch the small ribbon on his jacket lapel, a medal of honor that most civilians wouldn't recognize or understand. Then, a clear, authoritative voice cuts through the restaurant noise like a blade through silk. Colonel Patricia Martinez stands up from her table near the window, her military bearing unmistakable even in civilian clothes, and calls out Joseph's name with recognition and respect that silences the entire dining room. Patricia approaches the host station with the confident stride of someone accustomed to command authority, her eyes fixed on Ashley and Derek with the kind of intensity that makes career soldiers straighten their spines. She tells them that they've just refused service to Sergeant Major Joseph Washington, a Medal of Honor recipient, an American hero. Ashley and Derek stare at Patricia in confusion, clearly not understanding the significance of what she's telling them about Joseph's identity and service record. Patricia explains that she met Joseph at a Pentagon ceremony where he was honored for extraordinary valor in combat, actions that saved the lives of an entire platoon during the Vietnam War. The restaurant falls completely silent as Patricia describes Joseph's heroic actions on March 15, 1969, when he single-handedly held off an enemy assault while his wounded comrades were evacuated. She tells the gathering crowd that Joseph fought for 6 hours with multiple injuries, calling in artillery strikes on his own position to prevent enemy forces from overrunning the landing zone. Patricia's voice carries the authority of someone who has spent decades in military service and understands the true meaning of courage and sacrifice. She explains that Joseph received the Medal of Honor directly from President Nixon, and that his actions in Vietnam exemplify the highest traditions of American military service and personal valor under fire. Derek's confident demeanor crumbles as he realizes the magnitude of his mistake in refusing service to a genuine American hero. Ashley looks around the restaurant at the faces of customers who are now staring at her with judgment rather than approval for her discriminatory behavior toward a decorated veteran. Patricia continues her defense of Joseph, explaining to the stunned diners that this man fought and bled for their freedom while they were probably not even born yet. She tells them that Joseph's worn clothing represents years of economic struggle following his military service, not a lack of character or worthiness of respect. The well-dressed couple who had approved of Ashley's initial rejection now look embarrassed and uncomfortable as they understand they've been witnessing the humiliation of a war hero. Other customers put away their phones, no longer finding entertainment in what they now recognize as a shameful display of ignorance and prejudice. Patricia places her hand on Joseph's shoulder and tells Derek that she's a career military officer who has had the honor of serving alongside heroes like Joseph throughout her career. She explains that any establishment that refuses service to Medal of Honor recipients doesn't deserve the business of patriotic Americans who understand sacrifice and service. Derek frantically apologizes and offers Joseph the best table in the restaurant, promising complimentary meals and whatever else might make amends for the terrible misunderstanding. Joseph looks at the faces around him, seeing shame and regret where moments before there had been disgust and rejection. Patricia insists that Joseph join her table for dinner, explaining that it would be her honor to share a meal with someone whose courage and sacrifice made her own military career possible. She tells the restaurant staff that they'll both be paying for their own meals, but that respect and dignity are not for sale or negotiation. As they sit down together, Patricia asks Joseph about his life since leaving the military, learning about his struggles with PTSD, his difficulty finding steady employment, and his ongoing health problems related to combat injuries. Joseph listens in amazement as Patricia describes her own military career and her deep respect for veterans of his generation. Patricia explains that she became a career officer partly because of heroes like Joseph, who proved that ordinary Americans could display extraordinary courage when their country needed them most. She tells him that learning about Medal of Honor recipients like him inspired her to pursue military service and strive for the same standards of excellence and dedication. The dinner conversation reveals that both Patricia and Joseph served in different conflicts but share the common bond of military service and understanding of sacrifice. Patricia talks about her deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan, while Joseph describes his experiences in Vietnam and the long journey of healing and adjustment that followed. Other diners approach their table throughout the evening to apologize to Joseph and thank him for his service, many of them ashamed of their initial reactions and eager to make amends for their ignorance. Ashley tearfully apologizes and explains that she never learned to recognize military decorations or understand their significance. Derek announces to the restaurant that Joseph's meal is complimentary and that the Golden Fork will be implementing staff training about recognizing and respecting military service members and veterans. He promises that this kind of discrimination will never happen again in his establishment. As the evening ends, Patricia gives Joseph her contact information and invites him to upcoming military events and veteran gatherings where his presence would be welcomed and celebrated. She explains that the military community takes care of its own, and that Joseph should never have to face rejection or loneliness again. 6 months later, Joseph is a regular guest at military functions and veteran events, surrounded by people who understand and appreciate his service and sacrifice. Patricia arranged for him to receive improved veteran benefits and health care, ensuring that his remaining years are lived with the dignity and respect that heroes deserve. The Golden Fork becomes known as a veteran-friendly establishment, with photos of local military heroes displayed prominently and staff trained to recognize and honor those who served. Ashley becomes an advocate for veteran awareness, using her mistake as a learning experience to educate others about respect and recognition. What happens when this colonel intervenes will restore your faith in military loyalty and show you that true leaders never abandon their troops. If stories of standing up for what's right move you, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments about a time you witnessed someone defend the defenseless. This moment of justice will leave you breathless.